Roger, thanks for dropping by. Kitchen time. I'm going to have a go at my two Neophonetia falcatas. They're called Vandas, but not in my grow room. I have plans for these, but I'm not sure I'm going to be able to achieve the plan, in which case I have a plan B. But this may give you a clue as to the plan. Actually, it might give you a better clue if I did that, as opposed to that. Yeah. But I need to know what I've got to work with before I finalise what I plan to do. Now I could look it up in my notes, but I don't know how long these have been in these pots. Originally they had some bark in the bottom for drainage and to let the air in. They now have quite a large colony of what looks like live moss. Well, I didn't put it in there, so the chances are it's more likely to be algae on the moss. As I say, I haven't got a clue what I'm going to find in here. Could have a load of rotten roots for all I know. Well, we do have roots, and they're not rotten. Well, that's a good start. I got a feeling that when I did actually pot these up, I wrapped the roots gently. So if there's likely to be any rotten roots, they're more likely to be in the centre, but these are not bad root systems, and those are either mealybug or scale, so the plants are going to have a good clean. They were sprayed back when I did the whole grow room, so in theory any bugs that are on there ought to be dead, but I'll make sure. Okay, we have a couple of rotten roots, but we don't have serious root loss. A couple of dead leaves here and there that can come off while I'm at it, give them a bit of a clean. That's not a bad little root system. As I said, that's effectively what was a broken root, and the bottom part's rotted. Apart from that, that's not too bad. Not too bad, and a lot better than I was expecting. Well, that one I can work with. That one I can work with. So we'll put that to one side. That's going to have a good clean off before I do anything with it, just in case there are any more scale lurking in there. They'll be down in there. I mean, this looks like there's some along the crease of that leaf. There's a couple there, so we do have some scale on there, which we'll deal with. So in the sink with you. I don't need to worry about getting the tags muddled up, and I'm certainly not going to worry about trying to pronounce the actual version. I don't think that's going to light up, is it? I'll put pop-ups, it's much easier. But that moss is not that bad. I'd love to know whether that really is some live moss. I think it is. It doesn't look like algae, it does actually look like live moss. Now I've got a theory here that is a trifle worrying in the truest term. This moss is inert. The process used to produce it should kill everything in it. Bugs, spores, pathogens, you name it. Anything that could be living in that moss should be dead. But I have now seen several instances where it appears to be coming back to life. Now this is not sphagnum moss. This is a different type of moss. So the implication is that either there were some spores on the plant itself when it went in this moss and they grew, or there were spores in the moss and they weren't dead, which is a trifle worrying. It's not the end of the world. I mean, you know, live moss is not a big deal. But anyway, once it's fluffed up, there's an awful lot of moss came out of that pot. Anyway, that's one done. Now this one's going to be a bit of a nuisance because it has got some roots poking out the bottom of the pot. I'm hoping they'll pull through, but they may not. Let's see if I can guide them. Oh, they came straight out. Well, you've got to have some luck sometimes. It's the same here, you know. Now this is a bit more smelly, this one. So in theory we may have more rotten roots in here. have some rotten roots. It's amazing when this stuff comes out of a pot how much there is. And the chances are I probably packed it in there a lot firmer than it should have been. That's not bad, not brilliant. I'm worried a little more about the actual state of the plant here. So I've got a feeling they may plant. Let's put an S on the end, shall we? Plants. So you can see there's some scale in there. And on a plant like this is a miniature. Scale is not going to do it any good at all. See, look, there's a little plantlet there. It's absolutely smothered in them. Oh, that can just. But this looks like the base of the plant may have had some rot, and it's separated. But to get at the scale, I need to separate it anyway, which might not leave me with much on this one, quite honestly. I mean, that little pair of fans there, complete with scale, has got a rotten root, and one good one, plus the basis of one that may grow on. So that's not much to work with. This bit just fell off. What have we got here? It's falling apart, and I can see why. The scale have got in there. They're probably destroying the base. I mean, that's not worth working with. I'm hoping to get a couple of good pieces. Again, there's a little fan there just getting eaten away, and another rotten root. But this piece does have a couple of good roots, so that's a good piece. This root is not rotten. Doesn't seem very well attached, and it certainly is from that point down. So that's a little piece to work with. What else have we got then? Is this bit going to stay in one piece? See, this definitely wasn't in lots of pieces when it was potted. So something's happened to the base of the plant to separate those pieces, which implies there's been some rot going on. Now again, that's only a little fan, but it has got two roots. So we can work with that. What else have we got? I'd love to keep that piece intact. Yeah, that piece is loose. Not much left of that. Got a rotten root there. That's not good. That's not good either. That's not a good piece, but it has got one new root coming out. Now that piece will stay intact, I believe. It's going to need a clean up though. You can see this part. This was part of the plant once. It's just gone. So, and look at the scale at the base of that root. See, they don't only get on the leaves. So this plant's problem is the scale, not necessarily being in its pot too long. I'm going to keep that piece intact. That bit's rotten. Yeah, I'll keep that piece as one piece. And hopefully by cleaning the scale off now, it will get off to a better start. Right, so I'm going to treat all the pieces as a single plant, so they will get planted together. But I'm not worrying about things like that. I mean, that could probably be rescued, but you know, I don't need to, and I'm certainly not keeping it long enough and looking after it to actually get it to somebody else. So right, I will now have a clean up, finish my coffee, and have a think, and then we'll go from there. The main worry is the length of some of these roots for what I've got in mind. But we shall see. I'll be back. Okay, I'm going to have a go at this one as it's retained a solid plant basically, and it is joined. I've given it a good clean up, and this won't be done properly, but it'll be a close approximation. Now, I've got a little clay pot. It's the smallest one I've got, so that'll have to do, and it's got a single hole in the bottom. One with holes in the sides probably have been better, but I'm not messing about drilling holes. Now what I'm going to do is put a ring of lacquer around the bottom of that pot. Yeah, you probably won't be able to see this, but basically I've put a ring of lacquer round, leaving the pot hole not covered, and then I'm going to put a big piece of lacquer in the centre of that ring. That's going to stop the hole getting blocked up, yeah, and then the rest of the pot is just going to get filled up with a mixture of stones and lacquer, but with with the knowledge that the hole isn't going to get bunged up, so water will escape quickly. That's the plan anyway. And this is quite a soft clay pot, so it will absorb moisture, but it won't get a lot because the pot is virtually full of stones and lacquer. And I've got a special sort of lacquer because mine doesn't hold water, it doesn't wick. So what the hell it's made of, I don't know. That's why I don't use it for anything. It just doesn't hold water. I did an experiment. I filled a tall glass with lacquer, with that stuff, and put about 2 inches of water in the bottom. And after a very long period of days, the lacquer that was touching the water or in it was wet. The lacquer beads immediately above the one that was touching the water were dry, right to the top of the glass. It doesn't wick. For whatever reason, don't care. It doesn't do it, so I don't try and get it to do it. Right, now I'm not going to be able to do this properly. Hang on, I've got one thing I know I'm going to need. Right, to do this properly in the traditional Japanese style, you need long strand sphagnum, and I haven't got it. The type of stuff I've got does have the odd long strand in there, but not really of the right quality or calibre, but we'll see how we get on. So the first task is to cover this little pot with sphagnum and make a mound. And the idea is to wrap it round the pot. And as I said, if this was really long strand moss, I could just keep wrapping and wrapping until I got a good mound, but it isn't really got long enough strands. So probably the easiest way is to put the little pot down and just mountain it up until I get a mound, roughly the shape I want, and then tie it on with the fishing line, which is what I just went to get. And the idea is that inside this mound of sphagnum is air, plenty of air, because inside that little net pot is nothing. So as I said, I'm just going to make the proverbial mound. This doesn't need to be packed in tight. Quite honestly, when you've got soggy sphagnum and you pack it in tight, you are removing the air basically, and it'll compact so tight that hardly any air will get in. So I just want that loosely on there, and then what I'm going to do is wrap that with the fishing line so that it flipping well stays there. Now, if it was the long strand stuff, you'd just keep wrapping and wrapping and they'd all hold themselves in place. But as I said, I haven't really got the right sort of moss to do this, but it'll be an approximation. The words are doing it properly, but the deeds don't match. All I'm going to do with this is hold that moss in place so it doesn't keep falling off. Nothing more. And I'll have to tie it quite loosely because, like I said, I don't want to compact that moss. I want to leave a good bit of air in there for these roots. You have to bear in mind it is a vandaceous plant. A lot of vandas are planted up bare rooted and they're happy. Obviously this bit of fishing line won't be seen. Well, eventually won't be seen, but I still need it to stay in place reasonably well. Treading on the end here, but far too much, while I get the plant in place, because otherwise it's all going to fall off. So this is just to hold this moss where I put it, hopefully. And I think that will probably do. As I say, I don't pull this tight, because by pulling the fishing line tight I'll compact the moss, which I don't want to do. So we'll just leave it at that and hope it stays where it's put. It's just a matter of being gentle, really, not tugging and pulling and pushing and shoving, really. So that's that bit done, and then the idea is to spread spread the roots over the top of that. These are well hydrated roots. In theory there's some give in them and they won't snap. What I'm trying to do is open them up so that the base of the plant, there are no roots sticking down, they're all going out sideways like that. That are my theory, and this should sit nicely on the top, yeah, with the roots hanging down. Now some of these roots are going to get down in the stones and the leca, and it doesn't matter. You know, those will be the equivalent of aerial roots, and when I water this they'll get wet and then they'll dry quickly. The ones with the moss won't dry quickly. Now, as I said, this is the bit that to do it properly would now involve putting long strands round the edge of that moss, but I'm not going to be able to do that. Pussycat just come in. Decided to grace our present, have you? It's been out all morning. And I think the easiest way to do this is now to lift it in place. Is it? Yes, probably. And then what I'm going to do is the loose moss at the bottom, I'm just going to tuck in the pot. That's all, just tuck. So the whole thing is now sitting on top of those stones. And some loose root ends can be guided down inside the pot. If they go outside the pot, I don't mind. I'm just trying to make sure that's central. Purely for aesthetic purposes. So sort of think, if you're going to try and have a go at this, then try and do it properly. And then what I'll do is I'll just spread the roots so that they've all got their own little space. But to enable me to do this, I think the easiest way initially is to tie the plant in place now. I don't want the base of the plant totally sat in the moss. I can see where that plant has been potted a little bit too deep, shall we say, and it's suffered a bit round the base with a bit of rot. So that's not going to go round many times, is it? Get another piece, get another piece. And this is to hold the roots in place tight to that moss so that I can then get some more moss over the top. Do you know, in theory, apart from the appearance, that would do. If I just gently held those roots against that moss, that would do. The plant would grow and it would be fine. But I would like a little covering of moss over the top. Otherwise I'm going to be watering the flipping thing every day. Excuse me. Run out of coffee, that's the problem. No, I don't mean I've run out, I mean I haven't got any in my cup. I used to say to my son when he lived here, if I run out of coffee because you've used it all and haven't told me, you'll be strung up outside. We didn't run out of coffee. He drank probably more than I did. Right, where are we then? Now this is just to hold those roots against that moss. That's all. Certainly not going round tight with this, otherwise the roots will get rotted, which we don't want. But I do want them held against this initial bit of moss. So we'll go round again, just making sure they're tucked in, and maybe once more. Tying your loose end here. Don't want your loose ends tied up, do you? I'm just going back round because the line's caught on a sticky out root. Let's go around once more, and that will make sure all the roots are held against the moss. And where's my loose end gone? As I said, I could leave it like this. The plant would happily grow. Some new roots would come out from the base of the plant and go straight down into the moss, into the little mesh basket and out into the open air that's on the inside of the pot. they would do their own thing. Right, that's the plant held in place with the roots reasonably well placed against the moss. As I say, I don't want this fishing line too tight against the roots. I don't want them garroted, just loosely held. Now comes the difficult bit, to try and get some moss to sit on the sides and tie it in place, which is going to be almost impossible, but we can only try, can't we? Because as fast as I put this moss on, it's probably going to fall off. I only want a loose covering, I don't want much. Looks like it might stay there. I'm sure you could come in and out the back door and make some more noise. He's showing off now because I've ignored him. Normally you can go out of that cat flap without making a sound. He just gently pushes it open, but he's banging around now because I've ignored him. Right, that's that side. Round here, and then as soon as I put the fishing line on it to hold it in place, which I need to do obviously, it's going to all fall off, I suspect. It does seem to be just staying there at the moment, just about. You can tidy it up afterwards and tuck bits in, but as you can see it is falling off left, right and centre. I wonder if it's worth doing one side, put a loop round and then do the other side, because that way I can hold it. Let's just see if I can get it to stay there. Come on, behave. Just sit. That'll do. As I say, once I've got a couple of loops round, I can tuck some in if necessary. Oh, hands are wet. Try playing fishing line with wet hands, it doesn't work. Now again, this is the plant's already held in place. This is to just hold that outside layer of moss on, which if I had the really long strand moss, I think what they actually do is they just go round and round and round and round and then tuck the ends in, and it sort of holds itself, I think. I watched a video of somebody doing this a long time ago, and I thought one day I might have a go at that. Well, like I said, this is a close approximation, not the real thing. For one plant, I'm not going out and buying a load of the right type of sphagnum moss. First of all, it's pretty expensive, if you can get hold of it. And secondly, for one plant, it doesn't really seem worth it. I mean, it would still get used. I could always break it up. But it seems a bit silly to buy long strand moss to break up. It just seems silly. And all I'm going to do here is just gently go round to hold that moss in place. And the fishing line will be almost invisible. It won't be invisible. If you look close enough, you'll be able to see it, but it won't be far off. I'm just going to put one round the base, close to the pot. I've got enough to get round and tie. No. So that will be the last turn. And then tie that. Get them here. Butterfingers. And then snip those off nice and tight to the knot so that there's as minimum amount showing as possible. Right, how are we looking now? Tuck a few bits in. Be nice to have the rim of the pot nice and firm. And the one thing I will have to be very careful about is not tip the pot on its side, because if I do that, the whole plant will come out. The whole lot will just come off the top of the pot. So it's only sitting there. I mean, at some point the roots will get down in there and tie everything in together and probably stick to the clay pot, but they're certainly not in that position yet. As you can see, the whole plant's loose. It's just sitting on there, just loosely sitting on there. I don't want to tie it onto the pot, that would look silly. So that's it. That's my idea of doing it nearly properly, and I really don't like the look of that black root. I think I'm going to cut that off on the grounds of aesthetics. It feels firm, it's not rotten, I don't think. Perhaps it is, but it just doesn't look good. It'll look a lot better without it. So there we go, that's that one. And now for the bad news. What's left of the other plant is in tiny little pieces. The thought of trying to do that, like that, is a no-no. So I'm going to mount this in my more traditional manner. Yeah? Find a piece of bark and just tie all these little pieces on with a little bit of moss around them and see how they do. As I say, I've got quite a few pieces here. 2, 4, there's 6 pieces there. To try and get 6 pieces to sit on sit on the top of that is just not going to happen. There would be language, I suspect. So right, so that's that little effort. And do you know what? I'm not going to put a tag on it. It would spoil the look. It would spoil the look of it having a white tag stuck up. So I know what it is. And unless it ever goes out of the building for any reason, then no tag. I know what it is, as I said. And there are some young fans coming out near the base. This one actually bloomed earlier in the year. It had a spike with 4 or 5 blooms on. So this one has actually bloomed on several occasions. This one never has. So I'm wondering, I mean, there's quite a few of these leaves are discoloured. Now that could be due to the scale. It could be a deficiency. There could be lots of flipping things. Choose any 1 from 10. Please yourselves. Sometimes it's very difficult, but there are some yellowing leaves on those pieces. Let's get it set up on a mount then, and I'm not filming that, quite honestly. You've seen me mount so many things, it's just a mount. I'll be doing exactly the same thing as normal. Attach the plants to the mount, put some moss over the top and tie it on. That's it, done. But I'll show you it when it's finished. Okay, so that's my version of a Neophonetia falcata. Variety, dare I give it a go, Higashi Dimiako, or thereabouts. See you next time. Bye for now. Okay, and what I've done with the little miniature one is the small plants, effectively, I've put the largest piece up here, and then I've put a row of 3 across there, and another pair at the bottom. Now if these take off and start to grow, each one of those little plants should clump up and form new fans, so that eventually it'll look like quite a dense plant. I mean, there's always going to be a gap between this and the base of these, but the 3 in the row should clump up together and look like one. That should get bigger as time goes on, and these 2 should form a nice clump at the base. So that's what I've done with the other one. See you next time.